Let's take a quick trip down memory lane, because this is the 6th generation iPod Nano. I think this was actually our prototype for the first Apple Watch. So, I used to wear this on my wrist with a rubber band, actually, because I didn't know there were cases that made it look like a watch. But there were cases that turned this into a wrist computer, like the Apple Watch. Now, I've been using this for the past week, mainly just to see, do iPods make sense in 2023? And in my opinion, this week, using the 6th generation iPod Nano was great. Now, there were a few things I changed, but we'll get into that later on. But having the clip to just clip it onto my shirt or wherever I want it to be clipped onto, and then I can just take my wired headphones, which, yes, I did say wired. I can then take my wired headphones, plug into my headphone jack, and then go about my day, do whatever I want. I really missed, because we haven't had a headphone jack since the iPhone 7. Now, I had an iPhone 6S, I didn't have a 7, so when I got the iPhone 10, that was my first iPhone without a headphone jack. But taking wired headphones, plugging them in to a device, having a headphone jack, and being able to play whatever I want, was something that was familiar and I really missed. Because I don't know what it is about wearing the old wired Apple headphones that just pure joy it brought me, as I had wires to my iPod. Now, if Apple put Apple Music on an iPod, I think it would be game-changing, because they did with the iPod Touch, but if they brought it to a device this small, which it would be absolutely game-changing. But in a way, they do, and that's with the Apple Watch. So now I can see why they killed off the iPod line, because you have an Apple Watch on your wrist that does the exact same thing that this does. Now, yes, this did have a few more features, but also a little bit less. So, it by default has the ability to set a clock wallpaper. So, mine is just this simple one. It just says the time, the date, and the seconds, as you really didn't get that many customization options with this. It did also use a 30-pin connector. So, having the 30-pin connector was also just kind of comical, because it is literally the size of the iPod. Now, it was also something that I enjoyed, because just the simplicity of all you have on here is the Now Playing app, music, the ability to connect to the radio, the Nike Plus app, or the Nike Fitness app, which just tracks your runs and your walks, really, the clock, which opens your clock watch face, a stopwatch, and all that, the ability to import photos from iTunes, podcasts, and settings. Now, this iPod could not connect to the internet, which I think is one of its downfalls. Now, Apple Music did not come out until a few years after this was released, so this was not built in mind for Apple Music. But having it connect to the radio was something that made it worth it. But now, yes, I do have an Apple Watch, and it does the same thing. So, I kind of get why Apple killed off the iPod, but I don't use my Apple Watch the way I would use an iPod. I use this iPod while I didn't have every song I wanted, as I only had the songs that I bought years ago on iTunes and my family's bought, so I didn't have the latest music, which I was okay with. I did have the ability to listen to the radio, but I was okay with that, because it was just reminding me of a simpler time back when we had to use wired headphones and we had to kind of rely on what we had at the time, because these devices for their time were so far advanced. Now I have a 45mm wrist computer on my wrist, which is great, and I love my Apple Watch Ultra. And I'll say it again, if Apple made a space gray version, that would be all I would need to upgrade to the Ultra 2, or whatever it's going to be called in September. As the Apple Watch is great, and seeing how this iPod probably laid the groundwork for the Apple Watch we got, Apple did a great thing, in my opinion, with it, because they ultimately tested the waters with this and saw how people responded and how people enjoyed the product, and then decided to go all in and make the Apple Watch. Or maybe they were making the Apple Watch and wanted to see how people enjoyed it. We won't really ever know, but I'm being honest, it was one of the best experiences, just using wired headphones again and kind of going back to the 30-pin. Now, if Apple Music was on this, it would be great. And now, yes, I do understand my Apple Watch Ultra has the ability to have Apple Music and all that, and it does. But I don't really use it for that. I use it, if I'm using Apple Music, it's coming from my iPhone. It's rarely coming from my Apple Watch, which I do feel like is something that was overlooked. Apple definitely could have done things differently with that, in my opinion, and they're finally seems to be doing it with watchOS 9, but why'd it take 9 versions of software to get there? But that's a story for another day. As this little computer, we've come a long way to my 49mm Apple Watch Ultra, and just having 4 or 5 apps to pick from just really made this so enjoyable. And also this clip and not having to wear something on my wrist was another thing I really enjoyed, because sometimes you don't want to wear your Apple Watch, but you want to track your fitness. And this can do it all, which was great. But I want you to remember, today is a good day to make a great day, and I'll talk to you in the next one, as I'm going to go spend more time with this and enjoy this. Peace.